even within the same community, we all value nature differently. Even within the same society, even within the same family, we all have different views about the priorities of nature and what we get from it.
The role of value systems plays a high importance in the daily occurrence, the daily lifestyle of people.
Nigeria, my country, is diverse in nature, from plants to animals, from the south to the north. It has unique diversity and biodiversity, of which support humans, it sustain human, and provide livelihood to the people.
Into an extremely diverse set of natural systems and values. So in order to be able to bring that together, you need to understand the diversity. You cannot get together unless you understand the diversity.
Things are so diverse. People are so diverse. We've got so many different types of people that practice such different lifestyles, different land uses. Because their focus is also diverse. I think it is therefore important that we look at that spectrum of values and not just what is the one with the strongest voice, for example.
Values are context specific, and they are also not homogeneous but heterogeneous.
There is a different way of valuing nature. For example, biodiversity. People is also part of the nature. So the cultural stuff, it's also a value. It's specific for each of us.
The objective of this study is to consider and to take into account all the goods and services and not only some of them that are marketed. There are at least 95% of the value that is not considered in the strategic plans, etc., because they are not marketed, and the idea is to consider them and to build strategy considering this all the goods and services.
People understand that excessive use of natural resources can bring degradation or shortage of wildlife or fish stocks.
What we take for granted about nature is the fact that that's where we get our food. That's where we get, the most important things for us to survive as human beings. And I think we tend to forget that a lot. As the young fellows who are growing up, we don't even know what it is that our late ancestors were appreciating. So that is always left out.
Future generations want to really benefit from this, or want to find available these resources. And in most cases, we want to make sure that these resources, values, we enjoy them, but we even inherit them to our children and their grandchildren.
A tree gives more than what it takes from the people. So as I'm here, my thinking is, when I get back, what will I give to my students?
As human beings, we attach different values to whatever we have in terms of natural resources. Not only natural resources, but our cultural aspects, our social lives. So when we include that in all decision making, it's a way of conserving, preserving, and appreciating, most importantly, what we value as individuals in different aspects of our country.
But when you look at government, they're making economic decisions without thinking of how nature has to be involved into the process of creating wealth.
Sometimes there are good law, the good strategies, but they don't take in consideration the population and the local knowledge. So that's I think the point that they have to take in consideration. But also the scientific researchers. There are many researchers in Morocco, but they didn't include it in our strategies.
What I've seen in my country, like the intrinsic values, we only think about the economic part. Like you think about nature, how many jobs will you get from this resource, how much energy, but you forget the other values like beauty, cultural values that you can get from nature, spiritual, and most of the time these are set aside. Like you can go to some lake, some forest, you chase the people away from there. You forget that these people have been using this resource really well, that by the fact that they're there, it's important. It doesn't have to contribute to the GDP in a tangible way, but it's still important. So we only value nature as long as it's contributing some money, which doesn't always work. Because at the moment, we've not really had a system where we can value everything in monetary terms, especially in nature.
But when it comes with to data, economic values are most often taken into account because it's something measurable. And in Mexico, that's really important in the sense that if people have indicators that allow them to measure things for decision makers, this becomes really important.
Because sometimes communities, they tend to destroy when they earn their living. So sometimes, if they benefit, tangible benefits in terms of direct and indirect, I mean when communities are given, let's say, things like jobs, or they are allowed to enter the forest and can harvest, those really can enhance their participation in conservation, these natural resources, to make sure that they benefit the values, but also the resources are not really destroyed.
Have to be reconsidered, and we need to take them into account, because if not, then we'll be repeating what has been done over several decades, and we realize it's not really good. We need to rethink. We need, especially for the African assessment, to take into account the importance of those values that do not have monetary connotations and we cannot really value them or monetize them. So those spiritual values, those cultural values, those social justice values.
When we do a valuation exercise, researchers generally tend to just look at, okay, we need to go and look at what's the value of the tiger reserve. Then it's just about tigers, and then a lot of the species in there. It's not so much about the people, and say the people are deterrents, or people, not deterrents, sorry, it's the wrong word, but people are the extraneous factors who should be taken out so that we can have great tigers living in the forest area. But there's always been a culture of coexistence, right? So there is a mismatch.
You've been striving for development. Now you all have plans for emergence and transformation, growth and transformation. If you want it to work in the long run and meet the challenges that you have of demography, of young people looking for jobs, and all these things, you have to do it based on the understanding of natural processes, of linking science with the economy, with development, and you have to do it knowing that nature is a capital. Is our most precious capital to move forward.
I think because everything depends on nature, we get all our materials from nature. So once we destroy it, everything else will collapse. And I think that's what we should remember all the time, that we need nature. It doesn't really need us.
How much are we benefiting from nature in terms of cost, in terms of money, and in terms of the provisioning services? Then I would go to say how much is the cost of not conserving? How much are we losing by not conserving? Maybe flooding, how much is flooding costing us? How much are disease outbreaks costing us because we haven't conserved? So I would usually focus on the cost, because that is more motivating for them, because it's easy to see the benefits and the cost in terms of monetary measures.
You help everywhere.
A sense of place for them having the land.
It's governance and justice. Transparency between researchers.
And I think fresh air is something that we just, take it for granted, and we don't just, give it that much of a value, and we need to consider this.
I will hope that the government and our decision makers should rethink about the current policies that we have in managing our resources, which does not, for example, engage local communities, which does not really take into account local decision makers.
When you look at it from the standpoint of government in Africa, which have been growing, but growing with a lot of inequality and poverty inside Africa, then you understand that if you want to move forward and make the economy more equitable, more distributed, with more justice, then we need to be able to tap the diversity of the natural systems and link it to an economy that goes together.
In order to get more understanding of values to ecosystem services, we need to get more information about what is being done elsewhere that we are not doing right in our nation. And again, we need to create more networking and collaboration with other people in other countries in order to get more exposure with what is being done elsewhere, especially with respect to ecosystem services.
And in the end, people's food security, people's livings are based on nature itself. So if they were able to see this, then it will be great for them to realize that every decision they make has to be based on the ability of nature to provide a place for this activity to take place.
And through upgrading the different protected areas and making sure that even communities or the whole population, specifically those who are living next to these resources, are enjoying different value that are coming all other outcome from these biological resources.
We are bringing in a lot of actors, we are bringing in a lot of people to value what they think is important. And once we do that, we will definitely have this sustainable ecosystem that we all envision for.
I think most of the time we value nature because of what we can get from it and not valuing nature for what it is.
Somehow, somewhere we have to reach a point where we are able to balance our needs and what we take from nature and how it can regenerate itself. And if that is missing in the decision-making process, then it means all we do is take, and we don't give back. So if we incorporate these things in decision-making, then it means that we are able to identify where we need to come in as human beings or as planners or in whatever, how do we invest back.
When you look at the future of Africa, it's really about valuing nature. How are we going to be making nature part of our asset, our capital for moving forward to the next economy?